I would ask that we enter into the record the study Impact of Childhood Vaccination on Short and Long-Term Chronic Health Outcomes in Children, a both birth cohort study by the Henry Ford Health System in Detroit, Michigan. Ask that be entered in the record without objection. I would also ask that we actually have Dr. Malone in the audience today, and we'll see whether, what opportunity we afford him to defend himself. But in the meantime, I would ask that his basically resume, his CV, be entered in the record as well, because Senator Blumenthal has termed him unqualified for the position, which I completely disagree with. Here's his CV. You might even take a copy. It is the tradition of this committee to swear in witnesses, so will you all three rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. This ought to be an interesting discussion. Before we turn to the witnesses, in preparation for this hearing, I became aware of the fact that a full-length documentary is being prepared, basically talking about how this study was proposed, how it was conducted. And I asked the producers of that. It's produced by the Informed Consent Action Network. Mr. Sirius represents that organization. And I asked ICANN to put together a 5-minute video representative of what they're going to be discussing as they tell the story of this withheld study. So can we run that video now?
Children struggling every day with ADHD?
Scott's allergies made it hard to keep up with his friends.
Allergic reactions from accidental food exposure.
Moderate to severe eczema, psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis,
Food allergies.
Allergy seizure. The health of American children is in crisis.
More than 40% of American children now have at least one chronic health condition.
Autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile diabetes, lupus, Crohn's disease, all this IBS.
Just a few decades ago, 1 in 10,000 children had autism. Today, it's 1 in 31.
ADD, ADHD, speech and language, tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, sleep disorders.
There's no way in the world these kind of rapid increases in the incidence of disease could be genetic. Genetic change takes generations, centuries to play out.
What the heck is happening?
What is happening? Chronic disease has gone from 12.8% in our children in the 1980s to over 54% of our kids now. That's the greatest decline in human health that's ever been recorded. And people will say, how do you know it's not the pesticides sprayed all over our crops or the hormones in our beef or plastics or forever chemicals? But when we're talking about an autoimmune disease crisis, which is what's happening in America, shouldn't we look closest at the one product that's designed to alter our immune system for life? And we don't just inject it 1 time or 2 times or 10 times or 15 times or 20 times or 50 times. 72 times we are altering the immune system for our children with our vaccine program. There'd be one easy study to rule it out. Compare vaccinated children to completely unvaccinated children. But we don't know because they've never done the study.
The CDC's responsibility to do those studies, and they've been ordered again and again and again to do them, and they have refused.
This is information that vaccine safety advocates want, and I'm not sure why it hasn't been done.
What we would need is a scientist that the CDC could trust.
There would have to be a passionately pro-vaccine, highly accredited group of scientists willing to do a super robust, retrospective, vaccinated versus unvaccinated comparative study.
As fate would have it, Del Med, the head of infectious disease at Henry Ford Health System, Marcus Zervos.
Dr. Zervos is the perfect epidemiologist for the study. He's incredibly pro-vaccine, and he's also used to being in high-profile cases because he was at the center of the Flint, Michigan water investigation. Dr. Zervos only agreed to do this study to prove us wrong.
Del and I thought that was an excellent opportunity.
We only had one request.
Whatever the outcome, you publish it. And he said, whatever the results, they get published. Would he stick to that promise if the results show that unvaccinated kids are healthier? Didn't know.
Impact of childhood vaccination on short and long-term chronic health outcomes in children, a birth cohort study. I've never seen this study before.
18,468 subjects.
Henry Ford, like other institutions, has a bias towards the goodness of vaccines. If the results came back demonstrating that the battery of vaccines was associated with chronic diseases, such a result would be particularly convincing. This could be essentially one of the most valuable studies in the field.
The vaccinated subjects were over 4 times more likely to have an asthma diagnosis.
600% more acute and chronic ear infections.
4.47 times the amount of speech disorders in the vaccinated compared to the unvaccinated.
5.5 times risk.
616% increase. Learning issues, developmental delays, speech delays, language delays.
Amongst the unvaccinated group, they were 0.
There was 0 brain dysfunction, 0 diabetes, 0 behavioral problems, 0 learning disabilities, 0 intellectual disabilities, 0 tics, and 0 other psychological disabilities. None.
It's a big difference.
Very important this study sees the light of day.
This is devastating.
This paper should have been rushed to publication on an emergency basis.
We are systematically making kids sick, and not just a little bit sick, very sick.
This may be the most important study that has ever been done, and it needs to be published.
He knows if he puts his name on this, his career is over.
I'm honestly really emotional.
Zervo's probably going to lose his job over this.
Our first witness is Mr. Aaron Seary. Mr. Seary is a managing partner of Seary and Glimstad with over 85 professionals. He's handled numerous high-profile cases involving challenges to medical mandates, restoring exemptions, agency transparency, including forcing FDA to release the COVID-19 vaccine licensure documents and deposing immunologists, infectious disease doctors, and vaccinologists. Mr. Seary.
Thank you, Senator. Leading up to 2013, the Institute of Medicine was commissioned by the United States Department of Health and Human Services to review the entire body of existing scientific literature to assess the safety of the CDC's childhood schedule as a whole. HHS paid the IOM to do that. After the IOM engaged in that task with a panel of multidisciplinary scientists, it concluded, quote, "The studies designed to examine the long-term effects of the cumulative number of vaccines or other aspects of the immunization schedule have not been conducted, end quote. That's the Institute of Medicine's finding after reviewing the entire body of scientific literature. Meaning the IOM could not find studies comparing, as you would do to study the safety of a product, an exposed group, meaning kids that got vaccines, the childhood schedule, with unvaccinated children, kids who got no vaccines, which is what you would need to assess the safety of the schedule. Lacking evidence to support safety, the best the IOM can conclude was, quote, "There is no evidence that the schedule is not safe," end quote. This, of course, also means the IOM cannot find evidence to conclude that the schedule is safe. The IOM report did say it is, quote, "possible to make the comparison," meaning through vaccinated and unvaccinated children, "through analyses of patient information contained in large databases such as the Vaccine Safety Data Link," end quote, which used to be housed at the CDC. But to date, the government has still not conducted this comparison. By the way, the CDC published a white paper in 2015 on how to do that study. Has it been done? I don't know. Has it been published? No. In 2017, one of our clients, Senator Johnson said earlier, the Informed Consent Action Network, wanted to see this exact study of comparing vaccinated versus unvaccinated children. As the trailer you just watched noted, Del Bigtree, ICANN's CEO, had met Dr. Marcus Zervos at one point, who was the head of infectious disease at Henry Ford Medical Center. And he agreed to meet and to potentially do the study. He is conducts clinical trials for vaccines, including for the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. He's avowedly pro-vaccine. And when we met him, we argued that this was an opportunity to shut the anti-vaxxers up about their claim that unvaccinated children are healthier. To our surprise, Dr. Zerva said he would conduct the study. He recruited a chief epidemiologist and 2 statisticians within Henry Ford to do so. These were mainstream scientists who no doubt held orthodox views regarding vaccines. In early 2020, I received a copy of the study. It showed the results of the analysis comparing children enrolled in Henry Ford from 2000 to 2016 from birth onward who had no vaccines compared to those who had 1 or more vaccines. The study was based on actual medical records, meaning finally a large vaccinated versus unvaccinated study using health data from a major United States health institution, something, as the IOM pointed out, never existed before. The study began by explaining it set out to reduce vaccine hesitancy by assuring parents the CDC vaccine schedule is safe. Instead, what these researchers found was that vaccinated children had 4.29 times the rate of asthma, 3.03 times the rate of atopic disease, 5.96 times the rate of autoimmune disease, and 5.53 times the rate of neurodevelopmental disorders, which included 3.28 times the rate of developmental delay and 4.47 times the rate of speech disorder. All of these findings were statistically significant. There was also other conditions for which there were numerous cases in the vaccinated group, but 0 in the unvaccinated group. Hence, a rate cannot be calculated, including brain dysfunction, ADHD, learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, and tics. For example, there were 262 cases of ADHD in the vaccinated group, and there were none in the unvaccinated group. In this study, there were around 16,000 kids in the vaccinated group, by the way, and around 2,000 in the unvaccinated group. So the rate, of course, between those is important, and that's what the study compared. These findings were troubling, including because these chronic health issues can be caused by immune system dysregulation, and vaccines can cause immune system dysregulation. Citations for this are in my written submission. Overall, the study found that after 10 years, 17% of the unvaccinated children had a chronic health issue, while 57% of the vaccinated children had at least one chronic health issue, often multiple. That's 17 versus 57%. The only real problem with this study and why it didn't get submitted for publication is that its findings did not fit the belief and the policy that vaccines are safe. Had it found vaccinated children were healthier, it no doubt would have been published immediately. But because it found the opposite, it was shoved in a drawer. We have repeatedly urged Dr. Zervos and Lamoretta to submit the study for publication. They have affirmed the study was well designed and conducted. But Dr. Zervos has said he doesn't want to lose his job. And Dr. Lamoretta has said she does not want to make doctors uncomfortable. This is a real-world example of how the science around vaccines gets corrupted, how only studies that confirm the beliefs and policies that vaccines are safe get published. Everything else gets shoved in a drawer. This selection bias is dangerous and results in corrupting all the science concerning vaccine safety. We can protect children from infectious disease, and we can protect children from vaccine harms. We should and we must do both.
Thank you, Mr. Siri. Our next witness is Dr. Toby Rogers. Dr. Rogers is a fellow at the Brownstone Institute for Social and Economic Research. He has a PhD in political economy from the University of Sydney and a master in public policy from UC Berkeley. His research focuses on regulatory capture and corruption in the pharmaceutical industry. Mr. Roberts.
Good afternoon, Chairman Johnson, Ranking Member Blumenthal, and members of the Permanent Subcommittee. On July 4th, 2015, my then partner's son was diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum. I was in a PhD program in political economy at the University of Sydney, where I had access to almost all current scientific and medical journals. I wanted to better understand what was happening, so I went to the CDC's webpage on the causes of autism. As a PhD student, I was trained to focus on primary source documents, so I read all the references and their footnotes. To my surprise, I quickly discovered the CDC's narrative did not add up. Claims that autism is genetic don't make sense because autism prevalence was rising too fast. There's no such thing as a genetic epidemic. Then the CDC blamed valproic acid, a treatment for epilepsy that is contraindicated in pregnancy, and thalidomide, which was never approved for use in the United States. Finally, the CDC pointed to advanced parental age, but the odds ratios were modest, and the increase in the proportion of older parents is insufficient to explain the surge in autism prevalence. Furthermore, the cost of autism was already in the hundreds of billions of dollars a year in the US, and yet government was not responding with a sense of urgency. I changed my doctoral thesis topic to the political economy of autism and spent the next 4 years reading and analyzing nearly everything that's been written on autism prevalence, causation, and cost. In 2019, my thesis passed rigorous external peer review. It's now in the top 10 of the most downloaded doctoral research papers in the history of the University of Sydney. Since then, I've continued my research with Children's Health Defense as an independent journalist and as a fellow at Brownstone Institute. Here are the facts. In 1970, the first autism prevalence study in the US found an autism rate of less than 1 in 10,000 children. According to a study by the EPA, sometime around 1987, the autism rate in the US began to skyrocket. The most recent report from the CDC showed that 1 in 31 8-year-old children in the US in 2022 were on the autism spectrum. That's a 32,158% increase in the last 52 years. 2 massive studies from the best epidemiologists in California show that changes in diagnostic criteria only explain a small fraction of the rise in autism prevalence. There are 22 studies that claim that vaccines don't cause autism. None of these studies have a completely unvaccinated control group. So unfortunately, if you want to understand what's causing the autism epidemic, these studies are of no use. Then there are 5 large genetic research projects: AGREE, SSC, ASC, MISSING, and SPARK. Together, they've produced 501 published papers. The search for the gene for autism has consumed over $2.3 billion, and researchers have almost nothing to show for it because genes don't suddenly create epidemics. The human genome just doesn't change that fast. Then there are 4 large epigenetic research projects, so genes in the environment: CHARGE, MARBLES, SEED, and EARLY. Combined, they've produced 437 publications that look at the effects of air pollution, pesticides, fluorinated substances, PCBs, nutritional factors, flame retardants, maternal metabolic conditions, and volatile organic compounds. None of these studies control for vaccines as a possible covariate or confounder, so it's impossible to know the true impact of these variables. The critical missing piece in autism research is vaccinated versus unvaccinated studies. Thankfully, there are now 6 good studies that we can rely on. Unfortunately, these studies have been systematically suppressed and ignored by the mainstream media and the medical establishment. 2 studies by Gallagher and Goodman show that the birth dose of the hepatitis B vaccine significantly increases autism risk. 3 studies by Anthony Mawson confirm that vaccination increases the odds of developing autism by at least 4.2-fold. Preterm birth, coupled with vaccination, increases the odds of neurodevelopmental disability by more than 12-fold compared to preterm birth without vaccination. And finally, a study by Hooker and Miller published in 2021 found that vaccination increases autism risk 5-fold. Vaccination in the absence of breastfeeding increases autism risk 12.5-fold. Vaccination in addition to C-section birth increases autism risk 18.7-fold. After conducting the systematic review of 1,000 studies, my belief is that the autism and chronic disease epidemics are primarily caused by toxicants, mostly from vaccines and about a dozen additional toxicants. If we stop exposing children to these hazards in the first place, that would stop the epidemics of chronic illness in children. Now we must summon the political will to act. Thank you.